Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Michael Thompson. A lot of things have certainly changed as a result of COVID. There's plenty in the corporate world and obviously a lot in our personal lives. Perhaps one of the outcomes of the pandemic, though, that actually kind of crosses over between the two is a greater awareness of mental health. Obviously, the pandemic was a very challenging time for a lot of people, and it seems now that as we start to return to the office, companies are a bit more mindful of the mental health of their employees. That said, we still have a very long way to go. In the 2021 census, 8.8% of the population reported having a long-term mental health condition. Chelsea Pottenger is an author and the founder of EQ Minds. She's an international motivational speaker, working with some of the world's biggest brands like Google, Uber, and eBay to help businesses really prioritize employee mental health. Chelsea, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thank you so much, Michael. It is wonderful to be here with you today on the show.
Can we start with your own story? Because part of what you do is really work to break down the stigma around mental health. And that actually includes kind of sharing your own experience and demonstrating that it can happen to anyone.
It's so true. And I think, back in my corporate life when I used to do, the 12-hour days and the Hendrick's gin at night and the coffee, the 5 coffees to get up, the pounding the pavement for exercise. And probably a lot of your listeners can relate to that story. Very, very fast pace, rise and grind mindset, very unsustainable, to be honest. 2015 enters Clara Pottenger, our gorgeous girl. And to be honest, I was so elated, Michael, to fall pregnant. It took us 6 years to try and have her. So I was really elated. And so what happened in my story that was so ironic, because I was such an optimist, I was really looking forward to becoming a mum. I was a type A achiever, and then I have Clara, and then 9 weeks post-birth, find myself spiraling into a psych ward in Sydney, suffering severe post-natal depression. Like, I was clinically exceptionally unwell. I had suicidal ideation, and the safest place I could be was in a hospital bed. It's pretty heavy, hey?
Yeah, it really is actually. And I suppose one thing that really stands out to me, and that is the fact that you probably went into that with that same approach that you'd taken to corporate life, that being obviously a very kind of high achiever in the healthcare sector, in the corporate world. Did it really kind of take you by surprise that you were hit as hard as you were?
Absolutely. And I think that's, the other thing with that of being type A, high functioning, suffered perfectionism, is that I wasn't honest. I could see myself slipping, but also I wasn't educated about what perinatal anxiety and depression was either. So it hit me really hard, and I was very scared, but I wasn't talking up about it enough at the start of that, when I noticed that chemical imbalance at the start. And so 9 weeks, it took me to, get worse and darker and more despondent and more depressed. And, in life, if you, hopefully you never end up in a psych ward, my goodness, but, in life when you're faced with adversity and you're laying in a hospital bed like what I was, you kind of get 2 choices. And my choice then was, Chels, do you return back to your previous life, living here in Sydney and fast pace and work hard, play hard, party hard, work out hard? Do I return back to that? Or do I learn and I grow from this gift? And at the end of the 5-week stay, my amazing psychiatrist, she said to me, Chelsea, you have this weird fascination with your brain. You are a really lovely person, and you've walked through the shoes of a very clinically unwell patient, so you've seen it through the lens of a truly unwell person. Would you ever consider, reinventing yourself and studying psychology and come back as a psychologist?
Wow.
And I thought, rightio, I'll do it. So with her encouragement, as well as the amazing support from my husband and my family and friends, we moved from Sydney. We moved to a small town a couple of hours south from Sydney on a little surf beach called Gerringong.
Oh, lovely spot.
Yeah, stunning. So we left that. We left the corporate world. We moved to Gerringong. I traded in the high heels for a surfboard and some bare feet, and I went back to university. And I've been studying psychology for years because, my mission then, Michael, was I never wanted anyone in Australia and the world, to ever end up in a hospital bed like how I did. I mean, it was truly shocking. And so I thought, well, I'll go back, I'll retrain. And I became a mindfulness and meditation coach. Look, I still drink a coffee. Like I love a long black in the morning. I still drink a glass of wine on a Friday night. I think life's really about integration. But, to be honest, Michael, without that severe adversity in my life, EQ Minds, our company, wouldn't have been birthed. And so when I founded the company in 2016, that was the mission, and it will always be the mission of our company to empower and educate people to take care of their mental health and their well-being. And since then, we've trained nearly 1 million people across the globe, and it is just enormous gratitude that I get to do what we do every day with the world's biggest brands. Like I feel very grateful.
It's an incredible story, and the fact that the thing that frightens me most, I suppose, is that someone could be going through something like this, like postnatal depression, and you don't necessarily know about it. And I want to get to in a moment how corporate Australia is now working and hopefully improving at managing situations like this. But I've got 2 young kids, and when our children were born, my wife and I talked about kind of postnatal depression, and I think I realised that I wouldn't even know what to look for in that kind of situation. And if you're not asking the right questions, then not everyone is going to volunteer that they need help.
That is so true. It's really hard, isn't it? Like, especially if you think you know some of the things that are going on with that person and they're telling you that they're fine. So I think that's a really tougher thing as well. But there's so many great resources out there, with Beyond Blue and Are You OK Day, who I'm an ambassador for. But it's the being around that person. You are the best person to ask the question, because that was a huge campaign with Are You OK Day this year, was you don't need to be an expert. And that is so true, because it was my husband who asked me that question, when Clara was 9 weeks old and I'd completely spiraled, and, darling, are you actually doing okay? And that was that genuine question, and him holding the space. It really helped me to take my mask off of, pretending that I was doing fine. But little things, in terms of people's, I always say this to people, what to look out for within yourself, Michael, but also, within others, right? Your children or your partner or your work colleagues or your boss. Little things around like, what are they saying? Are they saying to you, I feel like I'm a burden, or I'm unable to switch off at night, or I'm a bit moody at the moment, or I'm lacking self-esteem? And then, what are they doing? Like, are you noticing that your work colleague keeps withdrawing from meetings, or they keep isolating themselves, or they are cancelling social plans, or they're having less interest in their appearance? And then another thing is being aware of like kind of what's going on in their life, right? Like, are they having relationship issues? Have they just gone through a divorce? Have they got major health issues? Have they just been diagnosed with cancer? Have they just had a baby? That's a positive thing, but for some people it can cause a huge amount of stress. Have they had grief recently in their life? Are they going through financial difficulty?
So it's kind of about not making assumptions, really, necessarily, that in the case of, say, having a baby, where people assume this is the happiest time of your life.
Yeah.
That no, it might not be that way. And that's why that simple question of are you okay is so important.
100%. And I think that's the biggest thing is when you go and ask somebody that question, number one, you have to check, are you okay, right? Like, you can't go and ask someone, hey, are you doing okay, when you're actually depleted, you're spiraling down into burnout, you've got no capacity to actually do something if someone says, no, they're not okay. Like, number one is always, are you okay, before you go and ask someone, hey, ask the other person if they're doing okay. So I think as across the globe, right, we just need to be kinder to ourselves and to each other. If people are treating, they're turning up and they're there as a physical shell, but you can tell that their mental fortitude, or they're just not there, they've got that blankness in the eyes, the best thing you can do is, in the right moment, ask them, hey, just checking in, are you doing okay at the moment? And
actually give them the opportunity to answer.
Absolutely.
Stay with me, Chelsea. We'll be back in a moment. I'm speaking to Chelsea Pottenger, founder of EQ Minds. You mentioned that now, since 2016, when you started the company, you've now had the opportunity to essentially train kind of and work with 1 million people across the globe, it means that you've got a fairly kind of in-depth insight into the way that the corporate environment would have changed across that time. Do you think companies are doing better now at creating an environment that is a psychologically safe place for employees? And I mentioned in the introduction, probably a bit of a hypothesis, that the pandemic might be a bit of a turning point and that there's a bit more attention paid to it now. Do you think that's the case?
I think so. I think we have come such a long way. When I started up the company, mindfulness wasn't really even talked about. Mental health wasn't even really a thing back then when I was having conversations. It was still kind of that, where we honor the CEO turning up at 2 a.m. on an international flight, rocking up at the office at 6 a.m. for the first meeting, going, yes,
Yep.
he's got it going on, almost like this sign of machismo, not recognizing that he could be spiraling, right? Like he's in this constant sort of mode of, and not sleeping like that actually really hinders performance. But I really feel like, yes, we have come such a long way since then. Still, there's always room. There's so much more that we can do in a corporate world sense. I think a lot of things have helped, a number of high-profile people like John Brogdon or even, like Ash Barty and many others have shown, that a lot of high performers do really struggle with and manage their mental health, and that they are still able to stay super high functioning. And so I think that's normalizing the conversation for us. I think one of the things you're mentioning about COVID, yes, it has become more of a workplace focus since then. We're noticing even, with the feedback from our clients when we're asking them before we turn up for a keynote, what do you want them to walk away with? What's their pain points going on in the company at the moment? It's still very, very similar themes. Mental health tips and tools, stress, burnout, anxiety, how to overcome that, grit and resilience techniques, sleep for performance. Like all these kinds of themes are still very, very prevalent. And I think there's definitely more programs. Are You OK Day was recent, and the whole of Australia is this awash with yellow T-shirts these days, which it's so beautiful to see. But it's going to be this is just a journey, right? Like World Health Organization is predicting depression to be the number one killer in 2030. So as leaders of companies, we need to be doing more, but also in saying that, the individual has to be able to take accountability and ownership, right? So it's like this two-pronged approach. It can't be, the leaders can do the best they can at the culture. The culture always starts at the top. However, we also have to empower the individuals, and we talk about that now in keynotes and workshops, about accountability, right? Own your stuff.
That actually kind of leads to something I was interested about. Basically, how hard is it then for companies to maintain a supportive environment 24/7? Because I imagine it's easy enough for them to set up the policies and do the training, but then as soon as the pressure builds, can all of it just go out the window? And is that when it comes down to the individual to say, no, I need time, I need space, I need help?
Absolutely. I think, we have to have those processes in place. With the great resignation going on, people are now looking for organizations that truly care, right, about their mental health and well-being. We know that. We know people are looking for companies that invest in sustainability, that have got gender diversity and inclusion. We know this stuff. So we have to make sure that we do have the right scaffolding around our people. We have the EAP in place. We have the workshops on offer. We are providing healthier options for them to eat. We've got bike racks for them to ride in. So yes, I think we need all those in place. However, if that person's still really struggling and you've offered them all these things and they still need more, I think it's, again, being respectful of that space, going, hey, we're here for you. However, we're also going to encourage you to, seek professional help, and that person taking that ownership to go and do that. Because I really feel like, we don't know half the time what's going on in people's life, right? It's behind closed doors, but we definitely need to be providing our people and our teams with consistent resourcing, because the person becomes loyal to the boss, right? Like they're usually not loyal to the brand most of the time. They're usually loyal to their direct report. And if that direct report shows a level of care, really genuine care, and that person recovers and they come back, right? And they're usually a high performer, right? But they're going through high anxiety or something like that at the moment, which is really common. You give them the space for that person to heal. They come back. You've got a very loyal, very high performing employee when they come back as well. And so I think it's always that two-pronged approach. One, company-wide, we are here, we are caring, this is everything that we're doing. And then, two, individual needs to be driven and also encouraged, right, to take accountability for what's going on.
Yeah. No, look, I think, and I should not ask you to do this in 30 seconds, but we are running out of time. So it seems very unfair to put a time limit on it. But resilience and grit, you mentioned those are two of the things that kind of people are really wanting to know about at the moment. In 30 seconds, completely unfair, I know, what tips can you give me to build resilience?
Buy The Mindful High Performer, my new book. It's got a whole chapter on resilience. I'm kidding.
Oh, well done. Well played.
No, I would say one of the best things that I've learned at university is when it comes to resilience is changing the words I have to I get to. So what I mean by that is people often dress up their situation as stresses when sometimes they're truly blessings. So for example, I have to commute to work. I have to, go for a new job. I have to pack my kids the lunch today. As soon as you shift that one little word to I get to, like I get, an hour of commuting time here to listen to my favorite podcast. I get an hour to socially connect, or say it's the kids' lunch. I get to socially choose the farmer that I'm supporting today to nourish my child in the right kind of way. So, that's just one small tip out of a plethora that we have in our resilience workshop or in our book, The Mindful High Performer. But it's a muscle, right? We can keep training that resilience muscle, which is awesome.
That's a fantastic tip. Instead of I have to, I get to. That's a really kind of simple thing that seems pretty easy to do, but could make a lot of difference. Chelsea, thank you so much for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's been such a pleasure.
That was Chelsea Pottenger, founder of EQ Minds. And I will just mention that simple question, are you okay, can make all the difference. And as always, Lifeline is available if you need help, 13 11 14. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson. Enjoy your day.